If you're looking to move to the best city in northern Colorado, you might actually look to the city to the south of Fort Collins, Loveland, Colorado. Ranking as one of the best cities to live in by Livability in both 2024 and 2025, today we are going to talk to you about just that. Why is Livability ranking Loveland as one of the best cities to live in 2025? Now we're gonna look at the dynamics of why Livability ranks these cities the way that they do. We're gonna look at why Loveland ranks well, Fort Collins versus Loveland, Loveland's pros and cons, and then my take on Fort Collins versus Loveland. So let's jump right into it. Now, it's important to understand how Livability is ranking these cities because they're looking at cities between 75,000 people and 500,000 people. So that alone cuts out really the big cities and really the smaller towns like Windsor, Colorado, that ranks well on so many different lists. On top of that, they actually capped the median sales price of a home at $500,000. So that actually throws Fort Collins out the window from the gun because Fort Collins' median price is $580,000 to $600,000. So they really wanted to look at affordability on this list. From there, they partnered with Applied Geographic Solutions, which looked at 100 different data points on each of these different cities. So this is not opinion, this is fact and data based. They looked at a lot of different components as far as affordability, education, job growth, economy, transportation. So on those 100 data points, they really compiled a lot of information to determine what places are the best to live in the United States. Let's look to see why Loveland ranks so well. So this is the second year in a row Loveland made a list, both in 2024 and 2025. Now, Fort Collins, northern Colorado is a growing area and median prices are ticking up a little bit, so they might actually get disqualified from this competition of sorts here in the near future because their median sales price is around $480,000. That being said, the feeling about Loveland is its community. It is called the Sweetheart City for a reason. Every February for Valentine's Day, people ship their mail in through Loveland across the country to get their sweetheart stamp on it and then sent on from there. There are 50 volunteers and the community feel in Loveland is really just that. It's a smaller town than Fort Collins, around 80,000 people, just below that. But the people that are living there love it and do form a sense of community. Loveland is in the Thompson Valley School District, which one of the best things about the Thompson Valley School District is its student to teacher ratio, around 16 to 17 to 1, comparatively to the Poudre School District, where the student to teacher ratio is definitely going to exceed 20 to 1, sometimes around 25 to 1, depending on the school. So that's a huge value of the Thompson Valley School District. And healthcare is huge. The Medical Center of the Rockies is located in Loveland, and it is one of the top ranked hospitals in all of Colorado. So if you have medical needs or if you want to be close to a really highly ranked hospital, Medical Center of the Rockies and the health system throughout Loveland is top notch. Now, before I get to the economic stability of Loveland, I just wanted to say my name is Patrick Sugup and we help hundreds of families move to northern Colorado, Fort Collins, Loveland, Greeley, Wellington, Windsor, all over the place, all of the time. If you're considering relocating to Fort Collins, northern Colorado, and Loveland specifically, give my team and I a call, text, or email. We would love to be a resource on your team if that is a consideration for you to relocate to Fort Collins in northern Colorado. But let's jump into the economic stability and diversity of Loveland. Now, there are some cool things that are happening in Loveland. I've got a friend who invested in over 100,000 square feet of a commercial building, and they're really trying to make this a co-working technology hub of Loveland. It's on the southwest side, but on top of that, they've got Stability Manufacturing. They do have a small tech growing scene, and then entrepreneurs are making their way there. They've got a redeveloping downtown, the Foundry. They've got some condos that have been rebuilt. 4th Street and Lincoln, it's looking completely different than it did 10 years ago. A lot of money is pouring into Loveland, specifically in the downtown area, and the economic scene is diverse, stable, and strong. And then finally, why Loveland ranks so well is it is affordable. It is at a $480,000 price point. And then comparatively to Fort Collins at $580,000 to $600,000, it is a little bit more. Your buck goes a little bit further. So the affordability factor on both the buying and renting side. I will say this though on renting, there's not as many rentals to choose from. So if you're looking at a single family detached house to rent, actually the rental rates could be relatively competitive or more expensive than Fort Collins. But on the purchase side of things, it is a more affordable option than Fort Collins, anywhere between 10 to 20% discount. Now, what about Loveland versus Fort Collins head to head? First and foremost, let's look at, again, the cost of living, cost of housing, and other costs associated with it. Cost of housing, Fort Collins, $580,000 to $600,000 median price point. Loveland, $480,000 to $500,000. On top of that, one of the biggest factors that you're gonna see that's a little bit different is the city sales tax. In Loveland, you're only at about 3%. Fort Collins, you're about 4.05% for the city alone. Then you gotta obviously compound it with the state and county, but it is going to be a more affordable city sales tax in Loveland than Fort Collins. Now the commute and location. A lot of people are considering Loveland because you're about 15 to 20 minutes closer to Denver than you are in Fort Collins. So if you're making that commute down to DIA or going down to Denver all the time, you're gonna shave off 15 to 20 minutes every time you go to and back from Denver. The location is extremely close to Rocky Mountain National Park, has some great outdoor activities, Devil's Backbone, Boyd Lake, among many other open spaces and areas. And again, if you're looking to head up to Estes Park and Rocky Mountain National Park on a regular basis, Loveland's gonna, again, shave about 15 to 25 minutes off of your commute. Fort Collins, a little bit further north, still great location for outdoor recreation, trails. And I do wanna say that about Loveland as well. The trail system in Loveland is not a secondhand step sister, brother, whatever you want to call it, to Fort Collins. They've got a 30-mile loop in Loveland and others that are being built. So Loveland's bike trail system is pretty solid. Fort Collins is not world renowned, but a platinum rated with 45 miles plus another 70 coming. But don't discount the strong trail system and bike system in Loveland, Colorado. Which brings me to the outdoor lifestyle. These two are both gonna go head to head. If you're living in Loveland or Fort Collins, generally the driving factor to move to those locations is going to be the outdoor lifestyle. A quick drive up to Rocky Mountain National Park, go hike Devil's Backbone, spend some time at the Sweetheart Winery, and then in Fort Collins, you've got the Poudre River, and in Loveland, you've got the Thompson River. So you do have recreation amongst recreation, whether it be in Loveland or Fort Collins. Loveland, you're closer to Estes Park and Rocky Mountain National Park. You've got some great open areas. And in Fort Collins, tons of natural space, tons of parks. Whether you're in Happy Park in Loveland or Spring Canyon Park in Fort Collins, there are great park systems as well. Outdoor lifestyle is a driving factor to live in Northern Colorado, whether you're in Fort Collins or Loveland. Arts and culture. I will say that Loveland, punches above its weight. It is highly sought after sculpture area, whether that be at Benson Sculpture or Chipungu. That is going to be a huge push for Loveland. It's arts and culture scene. Fort Collins also, again, we've got the Bohemian Foundation, you've got an arts and music scene that is top notch, and going head to head, they might just be a little bit different in what art and culture and music they're going after, but both are very strong and have a strong presence in the community. Now, retail and dining, this is kind of interesting because Fort Collins has Old Town Fort Collins, Old Town Square downtown. It also has the Harmony Corridor, but Loveland also, they've got the shops at Promenade, the Centerra shops at the Promenade, and then they also are having Centerra South gonna be built. They've got the outlets at Loveland, which are now considered the yards. And then they got downtown, the Foundry, and then Estes Park is not too far away. So all of those are just kind of different retail options and dining options. Fort Collins is gonna have more. We have 180,000 people to Loveland's around 80,000 people. So Fort Collins is just gonna have a little bit more, but Loveland is not gonna be a slouch when it comes to retail and dining. In fact, a lot of people travel to Centerra to do a lot of their shopping because the mall in Fort Collins is really not too awesome, and the shops at Centerra are pretty awesome. They were being built when I was in high school, I remember it. And they've got some good outdoor shops. They got ice rinks, Barnes & Noble, good restaurants. And then just across the interstate on the west side, you've got the yards at Outlet that are really making a comeback. A local Family Bottom, they're kind of renovating them. They're kind of surfacing them, so to speak, and making them appear and feel much nicer than they were for the last 20 years of my life. And then new construction opportunities. Fort Collins is starting to get built out. Now we have 180,000 people and projected to grow to 250,000 people by 2050. And a lot of that growth is gonna be on the northeast side. And I'm not saying there's not new development opportunities. I would believe there's just a little bit more in Loveland, whether that be northwest at Riano Ridge. You've got also Eagle Brook. Then you've also got on the east side of Loveland over at Centera, the lakes at Centera, a lot of new build opportunities. And if you're looking for a new build guide, send me an email. We'd be happy to send you that guide, give you some information about different areas where there's new construction happening. You can get a new build. We'd love to help you on that process, but send us an email and we'd love to send you that guide. All right, well, what about the pros and cons of Loveland? If you're considering moving to Loveland, you wanna know kind of the full picture, because a lot of people start their journey when they're looking for a spot to relocate to move to in Fort Collins, because it's kind of the big dog in the area. It's our highest population center. We got Fort Collins, 180,000 people, Greeley around 100,000, and then Loveland around 80,000 people. So it's definitely the place where people start. But like this video is trying to kind of convey, Loveland's a pretty amazing place as well, and people aren't necessarily like reverting to Loveland, like, all right, I'll live in Loveland. They're actually choosing Loveland for different reasons, but let's understand some of those pros and cons. We'll start with the pros. Number one, Loveland's just gonna be more affordable than Fort Collins. So if you wanna be in Northern Colorado, if you wanna have that outdoor lifestyle, but your dollar only goes so far, Loveland is definitely an option for you to consider. Number two, proximity to hiking and outdoor adventure. Again, Rocky Mountain National Park is literally a park where people travel from all over the country to go and visit. It is amazing, it is beautiful. Long's Peak nearby. I mean, it is truly out your back door. You can get up to Estes Park, which is also an amazing day trip for anybody. In fact, today we've got clients in from the Texas area and they are taking their time up to Estes to just go around Lake Estes Trail and spend some time in and around the Estes area. It is a 30-40 minute commute from Loveland, super close. And then all the outdoor recreation like we discussed earlier, the bike loop throughout Loveland. You've got Mahaffey Park, you've got Devil's Backbone, you've got some really great outdoor recreation, and you are really pushed up against the foothills. So if you wanna stay on the west side of I-25, Loveland's a great option. Now there's less congestion and less traffic than Fort Collins. In fact, the people per square mile, Fort Collins is gonna be around 58 square miles and Loveland around 37 square miles. And you have 180,000 people in Fort Collins and 80,000 people in Loveland. So you're gonna have around 3,000 people per square mile in Fort Collins versus around 2,000 people per square mile in Loveland. So a lot less people, a lot less congestion, and a lot less traffic. Now perspective is everything, because like I've said before, talking with people from moving from different areas, if you're coming from Los Angeles, Houston, Boston, New York, busier, more populated areas, there is no such thing as traffic in Northern Colorado. But if you're moving from a smaller area like Fort Wayne, Indiana, yeah, you might feel Fort Wayne's not necessarily a great example, but if you're moving from a smaller town in Indiana, which we've had clients move from, you're gonna see it as a little bit more traffic than maybe you suspected. So the less congestion, less people, less traffic is definitely a push for Loveland. There's a great, strong sense of community in Loveland. In fact, we have 3 agents that live in Loveland, and one of them's lived there since he was 7 years old. And while he's had many opportunities to move to Fort Collins, his community, his life, his group is in Loveland. And he's not gonna move anywhere unless it's out of state to maybe family back in Texas. I don't know, but if it's in if it's in Northern Colorado, it's going to be Loveland. And he's got a great sense of community, good friends groups. It seems like he knows everybody in the town and everybody knows him, but that's one strong thing about Loveland compared to Fort Collins is you still have, not Mayberry, but definitely people pretty much know everyone in town to a certain degree. Now you've got a growing economy and stable employers, whether it be Medical Center of the Rockies, you've got a lot of different different entrepreneurs, businesses setting roots in Loveland, wanting to take shape and form in Loveland or Berthoud, yes, north to Fort Collins, but Northern Colorado is a hub of employers wanting to be, and Loveland is definitely a strong opportunity for those entrepreneurs and employers. Now, what about its cons? Loveland's got its cons. It does have less people than Fort Collins, 180,000 versus 77,000, 80,000 people or so. So you do have a little bit less traffic if you're trying to open up a retail opportunity or a business and set roots in Loveland, as well as fewer options for, dining and things of that nature. We talked earlier, there's still strong amount, but just not as many as in Fort Collins. And the nightlife entertainment is going to be a lot quieter, but like I said, off of 4th Street, downtown, you can still get rowdy. You can still have a good time. Harry's Pub. There are plenty of opportunities. It just might not be as active as Fort Collins, which is saying something, because in many of my videos that I've talked about Fort Collins, one of the things is on a Wednesday night at 9 o'clock, the city shuts down. So if I'm saying that Fort Collins has a busier, more opportunistic lifestyle than Loveland, what is that saying about Loveland? Now, the Thompson Valley School District has a student to teacher ratio of 16 to 17 to 1 comparatively to Poudre School District's, north of 20 to 1. But the Poudre School District scores, they seem to always test better and perform better than Thompson Valley. Poudre School District is paying a little bit more to its teachers. Their teacher retention is strong. And so I would say overall, Poudre School District is a better school district based off of scores than the Thompson Valley School District. And then finally, if you are looking to start a business in Northern Colorado, Loveland is an opportunity for you for sure. But if I was looking at Fort Collins or Loveland to start the business, I would definitely prefer to be in Fort Collins if you're going to be like a physical location that's important to you. Now, one thing that I have discussed on this channel before is while I live in Fort Collins, I'm living in Northern Colorado. So there is nothing to say that you couldn't live in Loveland and have a business in Fort Collins, which I did, and be successful. So that's something to consider is, again, while I live in Fort Collins, I'm living in Northern Colorado. Loveland is truly 15 to 20 minutes tops. Not too bad of traffic depending on the time of day. But if you're opening up a business that's a physical location, I would consider Fort Collins probably a little bit more than I would consider Loveland. All right, finally, what's my take on Fort Collins versus Loveland? Because I'm born and raised here in Fort Collins, lived here my entire life, except for 9 months when I lived in Loveland, Colorado. And I will say, I am a lifer Fort Collins type of person. Went to CSU, graduated from CSU, my business is here, family is here, so I am bound to the area to some degree. But I do have our 3 agents. I have plenty of friends, competed against Loveland, lived in Loveland. And I would say that Loveland is definitely a place where people are starting to seek out versus be relegated to. It used to be that, and when I was looking, I would say that Loveland was more affordable. So when I was buying my first house, I couldn't really afford Fort Collins. And so I looked into the Loveland area. I bought there, we did some renovations, not fix and flip, but kind of. It was never our intention. It was just that we were there for 9 months. We had some good appreciation, put a lot of work into the house, a lot of sweat equity. And then because our business was in Fort Collins, we did end up relocating back when we were able to make some money on the sale of our home and move back to Fort Collins. But that doesn't mean that we don't go spend bachelor parties down in Loveland when our buddies are getting married or spending time up in Estes or the Sweetheart Winery that my wife just went to just a couple weeks ago. There are a lot of great opportunities for enjoyment, fun, and family, and it's a good school district. It does have the phenomenal student to teacher ratio that the Poudre School District doesn't. I'm excited to send my kids through the Poudre School District, but I wouldn't hesitate to send my kids through the Thompson Valley School District. In fact, Zach on our team went through that school district and and he actually is an assistant coach and has been for more than a decade for Thompson Valley High School. So I can't say anything negative about either school district, and it really just depends on what your desire is of where you want to be. Now, if you're looking for a little bit more laid back lifestyle, Loveland is definitely going to be it. Fort Collins has that, Colorado State University energy that is really exciting for some, but not others. So if Fort Collins is the place for you, and you want to be around that energy, that excitement, that young spirit, yeah, Fort Collins is definitely a great opportunity. But if you want a little bit more laid back lifestyle, maybe not as many people, not so much traffic, definitely fewer younger people, Loveland would be something that I would consider heavily versus Fort Collins. And the long-term growth of Fort Collins versus Loveland, Fort Collins is still slated to be, 250,000 people from 180 over the next 35 years or so. And Loveland also is projected to grow pretty strong. In fact, Centerra South, developed by McQuinney's, which is a huge developer in Loveland, really focused on Loveland, is going to be over $1 billion. And the I-25 corridor is going to have 1 million people in northern Colorado between Weld County and Larimer County sooner than later, currently right around 750,000 people. So that artery is just going to continue to grow. So if you're excited about future growth, Loveland's a great opportunity, especially East Loveland if you want to be on that I-25 kind of growth trajectory. But whether you're off of 34 or Highway 402 to get into Loveland, both areas are going to see exponential growth in the coming years. When you see Centerra South take shapes and the lakes at Centerra, there's just a lot of great long-term growth opportunity around that I-25 corridor. So while I might talk a little crap to my team about living in Loveland versus living in Fort Collins, they love it. And I can see why. You know, I lived there for 9 months, been obviously the neighbor to Loveland my entire life. There are a lot of great opportunities, a lot of things that make Loveland special that are separate and different than what makes Fort Collins special. Now, if you're considering Loveland versus Fort Collins, definitely reach out to us. We can talk to you in more depth about the specific areas of growth, where areas opportunistic, and would really like to go more into detail with you, or if that is information that you want, feel free to reach out. Give my team and I a call, text, or email. Like I said earlier, we've helped hundreds of families move and relocate to the northern Colorado area, have dialed in our systems, and would love to be an asset on the team if you're considering that relocation. Thank you for watching, and until next time, everybody, take care.